What is a cringy habit you can't stand? People who talk about your private business to others. Vague booking. When someone posts that they're so distressed, upset, offended but won't refer to what exactly caused it. Playing music on phone without using earphone in public. Adults who shamelessly brag about themselves like they're 12-year-olds on the playground. When you're in a conversation with someone and they literally give you no time to speak. I hate that shit. Happened to me at a local music store yesterday. Dude would say a sentence with a clear ending and before I even get a whole syllable out in response he starts talking again. People who have a complete inability to talk about anything but themselves. I have a friend I've known for decades who has gotten gradually worse about this over the years. At this point I know if I answer the phone, it is because he has a story to tell me and that's his only motivation for calling. In a recent call, I just had a death in the family. It was very obvious I was going through some stuff but he'd only called to talk about the fender bender he was just involved in. A half hour later, I ended the conversation and he still didn't know I'd lost someone. He just kept pivoting back to himself. Serious. Hikers of Reddit, what was the scariest, weirdest thing you have seen in the wilderness? Attention. Serious. Tag notice. Asterisk. Jokes. Puns. And off-topic comments are not permitted. https www.reddit.com/r/askreddit/wiki/index#wiki_rule_6- in any comment, parent or child, parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit. Message, compose, to =r@AskReddit. If you have any questions or concerns. A buddy of mine and I had a gold claim deep in the mountains in California. One day we were hiking up the river with our dogs to check out the river and see if anything changed over winter as it sometimes does. He was an older man and saw a log and sat down for a smoke. I sat next to him and we were facing the river with a steep mountainside behind us with a ridge about 15+ feet up. Suddenly his smaller dog started whining and ran up and hid under his legs and my German Shepherd stood up and did a low growl while looking up the hill. I joked, "That's not a good sign." I turned around and a very large mountain lion was crouched ready to pounce. We stood up and I started yelling as I grabbed my pistol. The lion realized we weren't small easy prey and took off running. We knew there were bears and mountain lions around but never saw one before. If the dogs hadn't noticed and reacted, it likely would have pounced us and tore us up before we could fight it off. We were both armed so one of us would have gotten off a shot. I never went anywhere there ever again without at least one gun. We were 15 miles from the nearest paved road and another 30 miles to any civilization, so being injured up there would suck. On a trail in the Australian bush. Beautiful day surrounded by nature. As sundown approaches the shadows get really long and the temperature takes a massive dive. Desert climate. Suddenly, and I mean like in an instant, all of the sounds of birds, insects, even the wind dry up. I cannot hear a thing. At the same time I get this primal fear creeping up my spine. I just know something is behind me on the trail. Looking back there is nothing at all visible, but this feeling will not go and is so rooted in my amygdala that I start running. About 5 minutes of running down the trail and all of the birdsong and insect noises come back and it's like I imagined everything. I've been back to the same trail a number of times at the same time of day and never experienced anything quite like it, and it doesn't bother me to go back, but when I think of that specific day it still sends shivers down my spine. I've found human remains alongside pottery shards. But it's typical with the Native American history on that particular mountain. I found a tennis ball in a coyote den. Dogs will be dogs, I guess. My wife and I were hiking on one of our usual routes when we heard a noise I'd never heard before. In the moment, it sounded like a parrot to me. I legit asked if there was a parrot in the trees. The noise keeps happening and eventually we see a younger deer emerge next to the trail. Turns out deer make an alarm sound when they get spooked. This little dude followed us for a good 5 minutes making this noise. We also camped at this park one time and heard some blood-curdling screams at about 3 a.m. It was likely coyotes. But at 3 a.m. and in the dark your mind goes to some fucked up places. Hiking with my father, uncle, and a retired former Alaskan hunting guide in the outback for a 2-day trip before end of holiday. It had to be 10 or 11 at night, but the sky was clear, so the light was that really uncanny bright moonlight. Sitting around the fire after eating, all quiet like, some motion in the far distance sort of caught my eye and I instinctively said, "A deer?" Before my brain went, we don't have those. But Reddit, I could in that moment swear to fucking God it was a deer. I'd been living in Massachusetts for uni. I saw them all the time, I was absolutely sure. Uncle grabbed my leg and stopped me from getting up. Said, "You didn't see it. You didn't hear it. You don't invite it." And we all just sat there staring very focused into the fire for a half hour. You could deadass hear whatever it was shuffling around us in various locations, and then it made a weird like croaky gross laugh sound and whipped off at an absolutely insane speed. We hike every time I'm home for holiday, but I tell you what, we don't hike around there. Edit asterisk so I don't make too many fellow Oz eyes twitch. I know we have deer. But this wasn't a sambar or a fallow, and it was like jet black, so it wasn't a red. I called it a deer because it was deer-shaped but all kinds of off-tilt in features. It also looked like someone had cut its legs off at the knees and it was walking on the stumps. It was so short. I've seen hundreds of deer in the outback. I've never seen this thing, and I know we don't have anything like it. What are some symptoms often just ignored as, "I'm getting old," that really aren't and should be checked by a doctor? Double vision. I immediately made an appointment with my optometrist and ended up having a stroke in her waiting room. I have had a really successful recovery. Worst case scenario here. When I was in my late 30s, I started getting really tired. Yes. I was a new dad with 2 kids in 2 years. I then went through a divorce and moved a couple of times during 1 year. I was exhausted. I was falling asleep all the time. People started telling me my color was off, and then I started getting excruciating muscle cramps. In my sleep, I would wake up in terrible pain. I attributed this to not getting enough water, not getting enough vitamins, and generally burning the candle at both ends. I went my doctor after I started seeing some other things that made me go, Bruises from out of nowhere. Night sweats. Blurry vision. Simple cuts or lesions that weren't healing as fast as they used to. And within 48 hours I was diagnosed with a form of slow-moving leukemia. Hairy cell leukemia, I swear it's real. It just sounds stupid. I was lucky. It was easily treated and I've been cancer-free for almost 8 years now. But don't ignore your body. Check in with your healthcare professionals. If you're always fatigued and/or have headaches, especially in the morning, you should get a sleep study. I suffered this for years and someone finally told me I might have sleep apnea. They were right. I stopped breathing an average of 8 times a minute. Edit. 8 times a minute. Not an hour. I'm dumb. It's the apnea's fault, ha 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 ha. My dad's friend's girlfriend died of bone cancer and she had no idea. They drank a lot and she thought she was just hungover all the time. She went to the hospital BC. She was feeling faint and died the next day. Asthma, fatigue, insomnia or hypersomnia, trouble urinating or frequent urinating, digestive distress. Edit. As a forensic pathologist, I cannot tell you how many times I've had a corpse 35 to 55 years of age with signs of one of these maladies, and the family tells me, she mentioned something about feeling winded, being tired all the time, stomach aches, etc. But we thought it was nothing. Quote. Edit again. If you have these symptoms for a few days, don't rush to the doctor. But if they're chronic, lasting more than 2 to 4 weeks, it's a good idea to see your doctor. Cognitive issues. You may think you're just getting old and your brain isn't working as well as it should. But that might be the beginning of dementia or other cognitive impairment. Sometimes serious illnesses may interfere with the brain of your elderly relative. Subscribe, my brothers.